minute is up. We'll get cracking, and those who log in later are more than welcome to just jump on in when they can. I'll open us up in karakia first before we get into things. Feel free to follow along while you're muted. You can join in as we go through the karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei Māori ora. Cool. Tā alofa le paia ma le mamalu o e ua au fia potopoto I le nei tū la ono le nei wha moi moi. Whawhetai le alofa me le anga le lei o le atua ua maua ai le nei awano mo le nei wha moi moi. Oh, mo tātou te whelua iai. Olo ingoa o Chantal Hutch, o lo unuu ma lo lalawhanga o Mangiangi. Na o whanau I nei New Zealand, o te whaingaluenga I le whaala putuputunga o Sport Waitakere. Talofa love everyone, my name is Chantal Hutch. I work for Sport Waitakere, and I am blessed and honored to be your host for our Cultural Diversity webinar for 2021. I'd like to introduce my fellow Sport Waitakere peers who will also be presenting with me on this webinar. We're honored to have Javid, Jasmine, Jason, and Mick and Grace who are also assisting with the webinar. I'd like to quickly pass it on to Javid to introduce himself.
Kia ora koutou, assalamu alaikum and namaste. As Chantal has said, my name is Javid. I'm the Community Sport and Rec Team Lead here at Sport Waitakere. For us, this diversity inclusion space is really important to us. So I hope you guys get something from here today. I think we just a quick mention to the chair from the Whau Local Board, Kay Thomas, for being on this call. Without the support of the Whau Local Board for us to be able to deliver this, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you very much. And that is me.
Awesome. Jasmine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Kia ora koutou. Yes, I'm Jazz. Like Tal said, it is quite a privilege to be here tonight and be part of the team. I'm actually now working for Hapai Te Hauora, but I was previously employed by Sport Waitakere as the community broker in the Whau Local Board. So quite a privilege to be here, and although I have moved into public health, I still strongly believe and a big believer in the kaupapa of Sport Waitakere and what we're trying to achieve here tonight. So looking forward to the kōrero. I think there's some real rich conversations that will take place, and I'm looking forward to hearing all of it. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Jazz. Jason.
大家晚上好. Hi everyone, I'm Jason. So I work for Sport Waitakere as the committee sport and recreation advisor. And this week is Chinese language week. So I just said 大家晚上好. So it's good evening, everyone. And I'm very glad to be here and to share our culture to the wider community and to improve the social integrity. And yeah, I'm very glad to be here. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. I'd also like to thank and introduce our amazing special guests who have joined us tonight for our webinar, Linda Itunu, Adithya Ashok, and Amorangi Malesala. Thank you so much for your time. And we're lucky that we get to have a bit of kōrero with them at the end of our webinar. Welcome everybody again to our Cultural Diversity webinar with the support of the Whau Local Board. Our ethnic population in New Zealand and here in Auckland is growing immensely, and we're such a diverse community. And it's so important for us to adapt, evolve, and find ways to engage with our ethnic communities to continue to help them feel included and provide safe spaces for them to take part in sport, recreation, for our sports clubs, or even in our community organizations. How do we create inclusive spaces for our ethnic communities to utilize or participate in? Tonight's webinar is for us to plant the seed to help assist with the learning or the growth that's already happening in this space for some of you, or to help get that journey started. We acknowledge that everybody's at different stages of their journey in terms of understanding how to engage with our ethnic communities. And tonight we're going to touch base on 4 key ethnic populations, which are our biggest ethnic groups here in the west side of Auckland. Our Maori, our Samoan, our Chinese, and our Indian communities. Just a disclaimer, tonight's webinar is not like a one-stop shop. The information that we share here is not the be-all and the end-all. There's so many other resources out there. Tonight is just a basic overview to get that learning underway. And from here, our next steps would be to touch base with you, those who are wanting to continue that journey, and connect you with the right people, the right resources to help you progress into engaging with our ethnic communities. So without further ado, to get started, we're going to jump straight into learning a bit about our Maori community. And I'd like to ask Jazz to take over. Oh, sorry. I've jumped the gun a little bit there. That's what I like to do sometimes. I'm just going to reel it back in. Sorry, Jazz, your turn will come. Linda got me a bit excited with all the singing and dancing at the beginning. Now I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. We're going to just go into a short video that's going to set the scene a little bit about diversity and inclusion in our sporting sector. I'm going to unshare my screen so that Javid can share so that the video will work.
Team, do let me know if the sound doesn't work for any reason.
Despite their race, their gender. To me, diversity and inclusion is the acceptance of everyone despite their race, their gender or sexuality.
Diversity and inclusion means creating an environment where everybody feels open and comfortable playing the sports that we love.
It's a true reflection of our society. I know from personal experience how hard it is to feel accepted, and when you don't feel that, it's very hard to then go and express yourself as an athlete through your skill because you're feeling trapped inside.
And it's really sad that people can't be themselves. Yeah.
I know for me personally, with my Māori heritage, it wasn't something that I had a lot of knowledge about, and dig deeper and find out about your whakapapa. And being in a team sport, you need to work in with the team dynamics, but I'd hate to think you take away your individual attributes as well.
Running like a girl, tackling like a girl, that's what we've heard growing up, to the point that it's kind of normal, which shouldn't be acceptable.
We get called a lot of things. We get called, obviously, that we're blind a lot. Even when we're walking off after a game, they can yell a lot of abuse at us. And I mean, it's easy to say that you can develop a thick skin, but I don't think it's good enough.
You know, sometimes those slanderous comments that you think, oh, brush it off, may not be as easy to be brushed off by the people on the receiving end.
I think it's really important that we just accept as a country, and then to do that in sport is also really important, to say it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, you can play the sport and you can be accepted. Clubs should be really mindful of that.
The boards, do they have a true reflection of what New Zealand is? It's about bringing these conversations forward, being a little bit vulnerable, being brave, touching the lives of all New Zealanders.
Get educated, move with the times, be adaptable to change. Not every day is the same, not every person's the same. Treat people the way you'd want to be treated.
Given the opportunity for everyone to be able to participate in sport, no matter what your background is. It's really important that we don't exclude anyone.
You are welcome, the door's open, come on in and give it a try.
You're there for a reason. If you've got that support behind you, then there's no limit to what you can achieve.
In sport, we judge people based on their game.
Doesn't matter whether it's netball,
Hockey, soccer,
cricket,
Rugby,
Women's football.
whatever their background, ethnicity, orientation,
Cultures.
whether you look like me or whether you look like you.
we're all the same people. I think understanding that's really important.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeb, for sharing that. Cool. Now, I'd like to hand it over to Jasmine, who is going to talk a bit about our Maori community. Thank you, Jazz.
All good. And to be fair, I think we could have just played that video and left it there. What a powerful video. And I think a lot of key things that's the first time I've seen it, but a few key things that I've written down to touch on tonight, which I think comes better from the mouths of people who have experienced it firsthand, I believe. But yes, I have drawn the short straw tonight, so I am first. I'm up first, and yeah, so let's just jump straight into it. The first couple of slides, we have quite a few stats, and so I could talk through them. So, we can see there that in Henderson Massey, we have the highest percentage of Māori in that community. However, looking through these stats, it's always exciting and great to see numbers, but I would like to, I guess, say that in this instance, I think numbers and stats aren't that important when we're talking about the importance of our cultural diversity and also our Māori community, and looking for stats to validate that or the importance of it, I think is unnecessary. I think it's important on its own, and I think we all probably agree to some degree, because we're in this space wanting to either learn more or share our experiences or be able to journey this together. So I'll leave those stats up, or these slides up, just for a little bit for those that are interested in seeing it here. But yeah, they're all stuff that you can find online. And again, I think depending on what you're wanting to use them for, but I don't think you necessarily need them in this instance to validate the importance. Kapai. I will use this time. Okay. This is my very humble slide that it took me quite a while to put together. Thank you, Tal. So when we were talking about this, and I was saying to Tal, I said, it's quite overwhelming, or it's quite daunting to be the voice of Māori in this space, and then to have to explain all these different things that have to do with Māori, or that have to do with tikanga, when it's just one view, it's just one perspective, which is mine. So, and I can't be the voice of all Māori. This is just, so just kind of like a disclaimer, like please take this, like Tal said at the beginning, that we know that people are at different stages, that this is potentially just planting a seed for some, but it could be also an opportunity for others to see where they can be, I guess, champions or leads in these areas within their clubs. So tikanga, so we talked about, so there's a couple things on there that I thought I would mention, because there are probably some things within your club or within your organization that you already exercise, that you already do, that you already practice, but possibly haven't connected that to tikanga. It maybe just didn't know that it was part of it. So I thought, like, why not just touch through? I won't spend too much time on it, because I think the important stuff is at the end when we have the conversation with our athletes. We have, so I've just put in some key ones. So whānau, that one, why I put in there is because when you're potentially, when you're inviting someone in, or you've got new membership going on, this acknowledgement that they don't come alone, that you'll you'd be able to, I see now that people, when they're introducing themselves in a formal setting, they'll acknowledge their whānau, they'll acknowledge where they're from. And that's because as Māori, I think we believe that we're not coming as one person. We do come with the acknowledgement of our whānau and people that have influenced us along the way. So that I feel like is a big thing for within this club and organisation kind of sense, is just that acknowledgement and that awareness that you may be just registering this one person, working with this one person, but they have a whole whānau that are interested in their well-being and the way that they're treated within the club. You may already have karakia in your club, and what I was trying to think of as well is when you have visitors coming in and how you're treating them. So how you welcome them into your space. Like it could be, karakia is quite I think can be seen as quite spiritual, because I guess the translation is around prayer, but we have seen more recently the practice of karakia more so being around an affirmation within that space. So again, I think that fits within this space of diversity, is that we're wanting people to feel safe and included within the space. So for those that aren't too comfortable with a prayer as such, that we can then as a club or as an organisation, we can make that more accommodating in a way where it's an affirmation within that space. You may as well, so when you welcome in these visitors or the visiting team, you may have like a pohiri or a whakatau that I've put in there. And that there, why I wanted to put those in, please just bear in mind, I'm going to be jumping all over the place, but also like you may see that there's already Māori kaumātua, the knowledge existing already within your club. If you are aware of that, and if you're already practicing this in your club, then I wanted to also put in the importance of koha. So Mike Tipene from Sport Waitakere has a brilliant explanation of koha and the way that it can be exercised within clubs and even organizations. That koha doesn't necessarily have to be the gift of money. Koha is just an acknowledgement and a gift towards acknowledgement of their time and their gifts that they have shared with us, and then a gift that is of value to them, something that they can use. So if you're going to koha them, if we're talking about the club space or the sports space in particular, then how can you think of a koha as a club to koha that kaumātua, or to koha that whānau who have supported in the pohiri or whakatau process within maybe sports fees, like just trying to think the typical stuff, sports fees, your uniform, all that kind of stuff. All these things I feel are important to be able to acknowledge, our kaumātua and our whānau that would be supporting to uphold the tikanga within the club and the organisation. So then there's whanaungatanga, which is also that connection and the relationships. And why I wanted to put that in there is because relationships matter. I think we all know that within sports, and I think it's a great space within our sports environment to be able to make and build those connections. But another thing that you may be doing but hadn't connected that to tikanga. So I wanted to include that in there. And then the last one on there was I wanted to put in iwi, mana whenua, and marae. So the acknowledgement of iwi and mana whenua to wherever you are positioned, wherever you are placed. I think maybe you've already got that knowledge in the club. Maybe you do already acknowledge the iwi or the mana whenua or your local marae. Maybe you already have the relationship there. But I thought maybe that one or that last point might be just that something that maybe not a lot of clubs have going on already. So I just wanted to add that in. But really those points were more so just to say, hey, like you could already have these things happening. You may just not have connected it to tikanga, but now that you have, how can we then dive deeper into it to then check the meaning of why we're doing these things and how that can connect to our Māori community. Then my three main points was one size doesn't fit all. So there's no one size fits all approach, like I said at the beginning, and like Tal has said as well. And I think you're going to hear it the whole night, because there's one thing that we all agree on is that there is this we have such a short amount of time to touch on these topics, to touch on these cultural identities, but it goes so much deeper. So we can give you like the push or like the seed, like how Tal put it, but it really is up to you to be able to dive deeper in the meanings and what that means as a club, or as what that means as the board, which I think is really important. The other thing I wanted to talk about was this new generation. So you could have, and there was one guy in the video who actually mentioned it, which was really cool. Wanted to say, like, so you could have all of these things going on. You could acknowledge it as tikanga, and then that could be, you may have existing members who then see that, identify with it, and think that's great. There is a real possibility that you could have Māori coming in that don't know that. So the thing here is not to expect all Māori to know. So you could have Māori come in and they're not, this would be their first, so they only know of it, but this is their first experience or their first place of being able to exercise tikanga. So then I wanted to say, like, because it's a very possible thing that could happen. So then that puts the club in a really cool position and the opportunity to lead and to be able to provide that space for our Māori community to be able to learn that together. So my thing is, like, so if we said that's cool that we want to do this and we've got all of these things in place, we want to follow tikanga, cool, but being aware that, hey, you might get Māori coming in who aren't familiar with that, who aren't familiar with this tikanga. So then how can you then provide that space, that safe environment for Māori to be able to explore that? And what an opportunity, I think, as well. So for clubs to not only learn, for us to not only learn together, but then to also be aware of the position that we hold within the communities that we serve, to be able to lead and nurture that space for our Māori community. I don't know if I've made that quite clear or made it quite clear enough to understand, but I'm happy to talk that through a bit later, because I think that's quite an important part for our clubs and organisations to own. I think especially when we're saying, like, that we're on this journey of learning, and because I don't want as well this expectation that any Māori that comes in, there's this expectation that they should know, or there's this expectation that they should be able to uphold these for the club. More so, how can we serve our Māori community? How can we make sure that we are providing the space for them to be able to learn together? Ka pai, and that is mawa.
Amazing, thank you so much, Jazz. Moving right along. I will be touching on our Samoan community. Now, our Pacific community as a whole hold a big part of our, not only just our West Auckland population, but our Auckland population. But our biggest Pacific subgroup would be our Samoan population. And they are one of our biggest ethnic groups out here in West Auckland. Which is, I'm just letting you know why we've selected Samoan as the ethnic group to focus on. Again, these are just stats for you to see the percentage of those populations in each of our West Auckland local boards. And then our 2033 stats is just to show you how much these ethnic populations are going to grow in the future. So just kind of re-emphasizes the importance for us to really learn more, or create awareness about learning more about engaging with these ethnic groups, but also support what Jazz was saying in terms of not letting the statistics be the sole reason why we're going to engage with our ethnic communities, because regardless, it's very important. With our Samoan community, Samoa, that's our Samoan culture. And I've just listed some of the things that are essential concepts around in our Samoan culture. And same with how Jazz alluded to before with Māori, our Samoan community, we all have different understandings or interpretations of what our Samoan culture is, depending on where you're from or how invested into your traditional culture you are. Our New Zealand-born Samoan families, the way that we follow Whā Samoa will be completely different to back home in the islands, back in Samoa. So just understanding that one Samoan's explanation of our Samoan culture may differ to somebody else. But in saying that, there are underlying or main key concepts and values that will remain consistent across our Samoan community. So family is very important to our Samoan population. Everything that we do revolves around family. So when you, if we're signing up to a sports club, most likely be all our siblings jumping in to their one rugby team, or mum and dad are doing multiple trips on that Saturday morning to get the kids to all their games, and understanding that say if one child decides to take up netball and that one family is doing the multiple drop-offs, having an understanding of that concept, how stretched our Pacific families can be, how does that affect them taking on board roles within the sports club, whether that be coaching, managing, being a volunteer, understanding, oh, how come they're always here, all their kids play here, but I never see them put their hand up? What's the reasons behind that, and understanding the background. Our Samoan language is very important. Ngafa is our genealogy, where we come from, who our ancestors are. When we say family is the center of everything, we tend to, or my generation, we always talk about, oh, my mom and dad did this, oh, my granddad and my grandma were part of this, oh, my great-grandparents. So the linkage, our genealogy is very important, and plays a huge part in who we are and what we do. Understanding we have a chiefly system, the Matai system within our Samoan culture. What the hierarchy is, what does that mean? Those that hold titles, what does that mean in the community, in their community? How does that play a part in your context? Out of respect, how do we address them? Every culture has its different protocols, and understanding it can be so complex, but we're not asking you to have a deep understanding of every little thing. Oh, if this person's got this Matai title, I need to address them in this way, in this setting, in this, but understanding the baselines of respect. If they do have that title, their Matai title is the name that you use to address them, as opposed to their given first name, if that makes sense. Religion, faith is a huge part of our culture. Christianity is the main religion across our Samoan community, but there's different sub-religions. You know, you got those that are Mormon, Methodist, but just understanding that at the essence of it, faith is a huge part of who we are. So how would that affect your players or your members for your sports club? Do you have trainings on a Sunday, or are there big tournaments that happen on a Sunday, and are you wondering why your players or family members cannot attend? It's because church is a huge part of their family commitments. For us on a Sunday, it is church always in the morning. Doesn't matter if me and my siblings were out late the night before, till 6 in the morning, you know that your duty is to be up early on Sunday and attending church. If there are big tournaments, if we were in our traditional Samoan families, we wouldn't be able to attend those. But every Samoan family is different. My dad was brought up in the sports sector, and he had a little bit more lenience in terms of if we had competitions or events on a Sunday. As long as we did our part at home to make sure that we're practicing our faith, we can go and attend those things. So understanding the levels of everybody's cultural practices, I guess. We've listed there our important calendar dates. Those are just 2 out of so many other important dates that we hold. Independence Day, of course, is very important in our Samoan calendar, and White Sunday is a huge celebration for children in Samoa. And you'll see everybody decked out in their white outfits on a Sunday. Everybody celebrating, the kids taking part in the church service and huge big feasts for the entire family. But many other dates within the religious calendar, such as Easter and Christmas, also play important parts in the yearly calendar. Just some other things I wanted to touch on in terms of our Samoan culture, but can also go across our other Pacific subgroups, is around the volunteering. Other key values that we have is respect, service, love, and we love to serve. We're a very serving community, but out of respect for others, we always put others first, giving opportunities to others we feel have better knowledge or better skills than us to take on board those roles. So in a sporting environment, you wouldn't necessarily see many of our Pasifika put their hand up to take on board those coaching, refereeing, managing roles. Out of the respect for others, they see better fit for those roles, or out of humility. So if you're really wanting to engage our Pacific communities, our Samoans in that space, shoulder tapping goes a long way, or asking them in person, hey, we'd really love you to take on board this role. We see these skills in you and would love to have you part of the team. Things like that go a long way. I think it's really important in general, not just for the Samoan or the Pacific community, but all our ethnic communities, religious communities, anyone in general, is to take the time out to understand them, rather than assuming. Have conversations. What is it about our club or our space that has drawn you to us? How can we make it more inclusive for you, make you feel safe, make you feel a part of the club, grow a sense of belonging? Things like, if family is so important to Samoan culture, is our club offering a family-friendly environment, or is our bar open 24/7 at the club, or things like that? Or do we have bad sideline behavior where our language is terrible and we have a whole sideline of people drinking and yelling abuse at our referees, our players? Is that the kind of environment that would want our family to be a part of? So little things like that are things that we can take into consideration here in our sports clubs and our community organizations. But like Jazz said, it could be things that you've already implemented in your club organization, but just have not made that link to either tikanga for Māori or Whaasamoa for the Samoan culture. So yeah, so much more that we could talk about, but I thought that that would be a good seed to plant for tonight for our Samoan community. Cool. Next up, I'd like to call upon Javid to speak to our Indian community.
Thank you, Tao, and thank you, Jasmine. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more. There's so much going on there, and I think as organisations, we just need to think about how we potentially, what are we doing to make sure people feel included, and what are the explicit behaviours that we're undertaking. So, as the ladies have said, for the Indian community, the Whau Local Board areas, immensely, 23%, that's almost 1 in 4 people when you walk down the street. That's at the moment, and then in 2033. And then, so what are we doing? Does your club look like that? At the moment it's almost 1 in 5. It'll turn to 1 in 4 in 2033. But Tao, if we move on to the other sliders, there's so many, like the Samoan community, the Pacific community. There are so many different groups, and in the Indian community there are subgroups again. I've put it, you look at the main languages, and then there's so many more in there. But these are all key little things that we need to be wary of when we're connecting in with our Indian culture, Indian community. Even understanding the difference between Hindu, Islam, and the Sikh community. What are the dietary requirements? And I think I'm not trying to steal the limelight off the guest speakers, but I mean, the story for me is that I keep telling everyone is, I mean, I grew up playing sport, being Muslim. You know, the clubs would always put on a sausage sizzle. That's the best way that we all seem to fundraise. But Javid can't eat the sausages that you're making. And so his mates get to go and enjoy it, and I get to sit and kind of watch them. And so how are we explicitly including and people like that, and what are we doing? And I think there are conversations around cost and all that other stuff, but my parents, you know, we would go to Eden Park and pay an extra $2, $3, $4, $5 so that we could eat, you know, what was there. So I mean, food is a big thing for all our ethnic communities that you're gonna hear from. But that's just something, that's a little seed that I want to drop in there. But I mean, even understanding a Muslim community have prayer requirements. Do we have the space for them to pray if that's what they want to do? But again, kind of alluding on from what the ladies have said, is there are so many different, you know, you're not one or you're not 100. Everyone's on the spectrum in terms of their culture and their religion, and even the influence of the Western culture on their communities, on them. So how does that differ, and how do you make sure that you understand what these communities want? And I mean, you know, food is a great way to bring people together. We do it at Sport Waitakere all the time. So, you know, that's something for you to consider. But I'll pass it on to Jason now.
Thank you, Javid, Jess, and Chantal. Oh, since you missed my slides. I think one more slide. Yeah. So I won't be talking too much about the stats, as you can see from the stats, but I just do want to mention that Whau Local Board has the highest proportion of the Chinese population. And however, the Waitakere Rangers has the fast growing. I think for the 2013 census, they only got a 1%. So for the Chinese population in the Waitakere Rangers area, and also the Henderson Massey is one of the fast growing as well. And you can see the projection on 2033. So there's going to be a lot of Chinese people living in Auckland and then in the country as well. So we have a Asian resource hub in our Sport Waitakere website. If you want to know more details about the population and the demographics, and you are free to have a look. And I will check the link on the chat later on. Yeah, I will move to the cultural bit a little bit more. So Confucianism. So that's something I want to talk about, and the Confucianism has been a kind of fundamental philosophy for over 2,000 years for Chinese people. You can imagine how big the impact could be. So over 2,000 years, the people following the rules of the Confucianism. So if you understand the Confucianism, you will know why Chinese people behave like this, why Chinese people say this, say that. So there are 5 key principles of Confucianism. So the first one, and one of the most important, is filial piety. So it's how we respect our older generations. So it's quite important to understand that we Chinese people live in extended families. So, and the way we look after the old adults, and especially for our parents and our kids. So we live together, and mostly the older generation have a very strong influence on the family's decision making. So, and this is how we show our respect to our ancestors and our parents. So for now, it's still a little bit like that, but it's changed a little bit more. So the middle generation has much more power and authority compared to what it was in the past. But however, we still show respect to our older generations. So we live together, we look after them when they get sick or get ill. So yeah, that's how we treat it. And if we don't do that, this is very, very important. So if our parents gotta live in the rest home or living somewhere else, not with their kids. So the people around them, they will say, oh, you gotta abandon by your kids. So that's pretty much different from the Western culture. So Western culture, the old parents just live by themselves. However, if we do that, and the people around the parents will say, oh, you don't have no kids to to support you. So that's really, really bad. So, and that's against our this principles of filial piety. So that's quite important. And humaneness. So it's pretty much the same as some others, just not to do to the others as you would not wish to dump to yourself. So we treat others as what we want to be treated. So that's kind of respect and be polite. And so that's kind of quite similar to other cultures. And right and century. So this is the rules of how people behave. So such as we're not allowed to eat while talking while eating. So that's the rules. But for now, it's quite flexible now. But in the ancient times, and I think my mother still told me the story that when my mother was a little one, and her father. So it's really, really, really restricted. So during the meals, no one talks. No one talks during the meals. So that's quite you can imagine it's like 50 years ago. So it's still people still following the rules. But for now, I think it's changed a bit. But for some others, it still keeps just like how we drink. So we have we have certain rules how you drink a tea. So sometimes you will see the videos from the YouTube, how Chinese people drinking Chinese tea. So they have to take a shower sometimes, take a shower before drinking a certain kind of tea. And then they have a whole bunch of procedures how you drink a tea. And also how we just like when we in a big event, when we're organizing a big event, we sing songs just like Waiata. So we sing songs just in beforehand, just like Kalikia, just bless this kind of event. And the next one is loyalty. So this is also quite important in the ancient times. So loyalty here, the original meaning is be loyal to your empire, to your king, to your empire. But however, for now, it's be responsible, be accountable. So be loyal to your family, be loyal to your wife, be loyal to your kids, be loyal to your parents. So just be good to everyone around you. So be good just to your family, and take the responsibility you need just as a father, as a mother, as a kid, as a son, so as a friend as well. So this is be good to the people around you. The last one is harmony. So this is quite important as well. So we call it, so we Chinese people were always trying to maintain peace with social and personal relationships. So sometimes you will say, you will see Chinese people not saying no to you. However, they are just, the reason why they are not saying no, does not mean they don't want to accept some kind of offer. They just don't want to say no directly. So there was something else. Maybe, so instead of saying no directly, so because we treat as it's impolite, just refuse someone's request directly. So we're not saying no, just like, would you able to help me with this? I will say, maybe just think like that. So I will not say no, I don't have time. I won't say that. So we don't, so that's quite important. So, and also in the class space, so if you should type in someone and are you able to support on this event? And sometimes maybe I will go back home kind of stuff. So we don't say no directly. We will try to find excuse, to not give you the direct answer at the moment. So we will say maybe later. So and we will just But however, Chinese people will know. That's a no. But maybe some other people from other ethnicity may not understand that. Yeah. Also, so by saying that, so we will not say that, but also gives you a chance to push it a bit harder. So sometimes if you push it a bit harder, we will, because we are afraid of saying no and refusing refusing to others. So we probably will kind of if you give it too much, a little bit more pressure, I will say, okay, maybe I will try. So that's a little bit tricky there. So if you don't push hard, don't follow up, so maybe you get nothing. And if you just try a little bit harder, and you get a good chance to have them involved. Just like say, would you able to volunteer in this event? Maybe say, oh, maybe no. So and I will say, oh, if you volunteer, so we can just know, your kids have a better experience, and we can offer this. Oh, we will say, okay, maybe I have a try. So things like that. So, and the language, we have so many language. So the Mandarin definitely is the official language. So, and the way has been widely used, and in the world there's 90 million speaking this language. And but I personally, from my origin, my parents are very bad at Mandarin. We say another native language, but we use the same character, and the pronunciation is different. So, but however, we use the same language, and also the Cantonese is also the widely used language as well. And the religion is Buddhism, and we also another religion is Tao. So I think people, Chinese people, just make them up, and because when we was a kid, we got the stories of the tales of the gods, the legendaries. So it's really, and you can see the all the museums and the theaters playing the drama shows and so as well. And the important calendar dates, definitely the first most important is Chinese New Year, the first of January on lunar calendar. So it changes every year. So it depends, mostly it's just like late January or early February. And the National Day is coming up the 1st of October. And also we just had our Mid-Autumn Festival. And also Dragon Ball Festival is also important. So in the Chinese culture, there's so much talking about for the Confucianism, because it has been so long history. But by understanding those five key principles, you will see why Chinese people behave like that, and how you can better engage with Chinese people. For more information, so if you are interested, we have the Asian Chinese Community Engagement Toolkit for the clubs to use on our website. So it has all the cultural and the protocols and some tips and hints for you in a club space to better engage with Chinese community. So I will check those two links in the chat function after the presentation. So for your information. Thanks, Tal.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason, Javid, and Jazz, for all your expertise in these spaces. Now we've reached the exciting part. We're so honored to have these amazing guests join us for our webinar tonight. We thought it was really important for us not only to share some information, but to hear some real life stories from amazing ethnic athletes in our own backyard who can share their experiences in this space. So we're going to go through a bit of a Q&A session with our special guests. I would love to introduce Linda Itunu, former Black Ferns, Adithya Ashok, who currently plays for the Auckland Aces, also played for New Zealand under-19s, and Amorangi Malesala, who plays for the Northern Stars. Thank you so much for joining us, team. So if you three would like to unmute yourselves, I'm just going to ask you guys a few questions. We'll try and make it a bit, more of a conversation. And then if our guests in our webinar have any further questions, you're more than welcome to put them in the chat, and Nick can fire them away at the end. All good? Sweet. Let's start with you, Linda. What was it that got you into organized sport or competitive sport?
I think what initially got me into it was long story, but if I relate it to the topic that we're going through today, is probably a sense of belonging. So I started playing footy when I was 16 in high school, and I kind of had a dream that I'll make the Black Ferns when I was about 19, but fortunately when I moved to the best club in New Zealand, Ponsonby Rugby, I made it. I initially started at Waitemata, so I always give credit to Waitemata because that's where I started. And then I moved to Ponsonby, and that's when I first made it into the Black Ferns. But I guess what I loved about it when I went to the club was that there was such a sense of family. So in terms of the environment that I was in, it was so welcoming, like how we spoke about the Pacifica and what's important to us. At Ponsonby, that's what it felt like. It felt like that it was a welcoming environment, and especially that same year I made into the Black Ferns, and being a youngster in the Black Ferns, you kind of like feel a bit timid. But the cool thing that they had in the team was that we had like different little groups. So we had like a social group, a Bible study group, and like little other like attack group and that kind of stuff. But when I went in like the cultural group, they had like a songbook. But although in the songbook they had different cultures, so I felt right at home because they had like Samoan songs and Maori songs, and straight away just having that available, straight away I felt like I belonged. So to keep it short and give the opportunity to the other athletes, I would say that's what, that's early stage of my career.
Awesome. See, told you you should have sang a song at the beginning from your songbook.
We'll leave it for later, right?
How about you, Addie? What was your journey into the organised sport sector?
Well, so mine probably starts more from my dad. He had a real burning passion for cricket, and he played quite a lot when he was back home in India. And that sort of rubbed off on me, I guess, and my earliest memories sort of, just absolutely loving spending time with my old man in the backyard with him throwing balls at me, and me, just absolutely loving every minute of it. And that's probably where I got that sort of passion for cricket. And as soon as I was old enough to be a part of organised sport with a club, really, I signed up right away. And I guess, with sort of cricket, it's sort of like you get that feel that it's also dominated slightly by people of Indian descent as well. Like it's sort of Indians sort of dominate cricket in the world today, and I've always felt at home being at suburbs New Lynn, which I am now, and also I played some junior cricket at Eden Roskill, so I've always been around a community which is rich in diversity, which helped me feel like I was at home at all times, and also at school cricket as well. Like it also gave me the opportunity to learn about other people and other cultures, and actually educate myself on other people, and really give myself an understanding of how other people and cultures go about their work and their business, and actually like be in a space where everyone's welcome, and that sort of hit home for me. And that's sort of why I feel like it's sort of been pretty smooth sailing so far for me on my journey as a cricketer so far. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Amorangi, any similarities or something different from your perspective or your experience?
Kia ora mai tātou, ko hui mai nei runga I te reo karanga o te rā. Tēnei te tukumiha te kia koutou mō tō koutou aroha ki tēnei huihuinga. I just want to say thank you for having us here today. So my journey in sports started at Kura. So I went to a Kura Māori in South Auckland, so I'm from South Auckland. But I grew up in a Kura, went to Kohanga Reo, went to Māori speaking preschool, primary school. So growing up, I'm also half Samoan as well. So in terms of like sports and everything, it all started at Kura. So it's actually the whānau that got us into sports. Like my mother, for example, she took up a netball team at our Kura, so then that started our journey in netball. But yeah, we had like all the mums of all the students at the school. They were sporting, they were the coaches of all the teams, and they'll do the pickups and the drop-offs. So I think if we go back to tikanga, you know, our whānau were the ones that really drove us to pursue a pathway in sports. So that's probably where my journey started at Kura, and then we started playing at Auckland Netball Courts, Morans Road. I don't know if you guys know where it is, but it's Auckland Netball Court. It's pretty big, you know, like that's where most tournaments are held. So that's probably where my journey started in terms of rep netball, playing for Auckland. But you know, I grew up in Manurewa, South Auckland, so I acknowledge where I come from. You know, wherever I am, whether I'm playing over, you know, if I was playing in Australia or if I was playing down in Hamilton, whatever team I was playing for, I always acknowledge that I'm from South. So yeah, I give credit to all the aunties and all the mums and stuff who you know, picked us up and dropped us off, and all the carpooling and all those kind of things too. So I guess growing up in a kura, that's all I ever knew. I only knew, you know, I only had Māori friends, Māori teachers, but it wasn't until I went to St. Kitts out in Howick that I really got to experience what it was like to be friends with Indians and, you know, like Asians and all of that. So it really opened my eyes to seeing what was really out there, not being tunnel vision into te reo Māori or, you know, just Samoan. There was a whole world out there that I didn't really know about. So I think it was really until I went to St. Kitts that I got to explore, like, you know, the cultural diversity and, you know, in terms of, if you go back to tikanga again, like manakitanga, like, you know, just being nice to everybody and, you know, being warm and welcoming. So those are probably some of the key learnings that I've learnt growing up in my sports. So yeah.
Awesome story. Thank you, Amorangi. Next question I have is for you, Linda. What were some of the biggest barriers that you faced in organized sport, I guess from a cultural perspective?
I guess before I jump to that question, just when Amo was telling her story, I mean, her part, just a story popped up about an early memory. You know how you talk about how you have the carpooling and things like that. There's a family of 8 of us, and you know, when you talk about how, you know, when you have the island families are so massive, they have to go and drop off everyone and they might not be present. There was this one time I used to play league on a Sunday and then school rugby on a Monday. But my dad, we had a Mitsubishi Chariot. I just want to acknowledge Eva because she's on the chat too, and because my parents they had other kids as well. Her dad, he used to drop me off after training as well. Yeah. Anyways, to get to the story, sorry guys, going off the cuff here. But yeah, it was automatic, like a Mitsubishi Chariot. But he wanted to turn it into a manual. So yeah, he did all that. But it was funny because our whole family jumped in a car, whole 8 of us, plus my parents. I don't know if that was legal at the time. But yeah, we were driving to my so we went to Papatoi that day and come back and the car was fine, but we jumped in to go to the church and the bloody wheel come flying off. And I was thinking, man, like the mileage that my parents did for all of us, because, you know, going to training and back, and then, you know, like just the amount of sacrifice that they did, and that's a typical island family, you know, going from one place to another. But yeah, that's just something that popped up in my head when talking about the aunties dropping everyone off.
Those are the good stories.
Sorry about that, guys, a bit off topic, but I guess the biggest area I think for me, not for myself, but probably something that I've seen, not kind of, I didn't realize in the past, but I really see it now in how the sport is run now. But I just see that we as coaches, or we need to be a bit more curious, or have cultural awareness, because there was an incident where one of the girls that she's like a potential player, like a New Zealand player, and she just didn't turn up to trainings, or she made it into the Black Ferns camp, but she didn't rock up. And instead of being curious and the coaches saying, hey, what's going on, or hey, can someone check on her to see if things are okay, or they just kind of assume that, you know, she just doesn't, she's lazy, doesn't want to turn up. You know, she doesn't want this bad enough. Only to find out later, which is something that I kind of realized, oh, flip, something's a bit off. So I went and I was like, hey, what's going on? How's things at home? And she was like saying how her mum left. She's the oldest of 6 siblings. Her dad went into hospital. So she was a main breadwinner. And she was the only one that was able to like look after the other, be working, or like going from looking after her siblings, or like going back and forth from her auntie's place. And for me, that just highlighted just the lack of cultural awareness for our coaches, to understand that, you know, not like you said, not one fit shoots, not one size fits all. So you got to be curious about everyone. Like, this isn't just Pacific Islanders, it's any culture. Like, be curious, like ask the questions. Don't just assume that they don't want to be there, or assume that they don't rock up to training. There might be other things that are going on. So that is a bit of a deeper conversation, but I think for me that it's a massive barrier, is just coaches and people in key places not being curious enough about their athletes. Yeah.
I guess it really shows the importance of understanding people, or getting to know people. What are their circumstances, or what's their background, so that you can really understand why is it that they're acting in a certain way. Because like you said, if you didn't check in, people would have assumed that she was lazy, when in all reality she's dealing with a lot in her family situation. So thank you for sharing that. That's really awesome for us to hear. Ari, who is someone, or what's an organization that's done something that's made you feel really included? Or what's a situation where you remember feeling so included?
Well, if you look in the chat there, you know, our lovely Kate from Suburbs New Lynn, the club that I represent and call home now, you know, she's put up that there's 60% of the people that have registered at Suburbs are of Southeast Asian descent. And, you know, like things like that are things that, you know, make me feel really at home. And especially at Suburbs, you know, like the transition back to Suburbs New Lynn for me was a real smooth one, because, you know, I sort of knew people there, and especially I knew that, you know, the culture around that club was really accepting of me as a person of Indian descent. And, you know, like people are really understanding of things like Javed alluded to before around dietary requirements, you know, like an example, not necessarily to me, but to other people that are in our teams, you know, like we've sort of made space and acceptance for people of Muslim descent also to you know, be able to pray during training sessions, etc., and actually have that, you know, like that understanding of religion comes first above all, and actually, you know, making them feel included, and like it's okay to be who they are. And I feel like that's something that Suburbs has done majorly for me, is being able to express myself as someone of Indian descent. And you know, like I think it's a pretty cool partnership that there's going on at Suburbs especially.
Awesome. Wow. Props to Suburbs New Lynn from our very own Whau Local Board. Nice work, Kate. Amorangi, having played in Australia, what are some of the barriers that you faced over there from a cultural perspective, and what is something that made you feel inclusive? So you've kind of got a combination of the two questions that I asked the other two.
Yeah. In terms of barriers, I was probably fortunate. You know, I was pretty independent over there, so I sort of had a bit of a taste of when I moved out from Auckland to Hamilton, and then from Hamilton to Sydney. But I was lucky that I had my brother there, so we both moved over to Sydney together. So obviously family being really important, we went as a duo. We didn't go alone, so he didn't want to go to Sydney unless I was going, and I didn't want to go unless he went. So we were like two peas in a pod. But in terms of the bigger challenges that I faced was that over there, I was probably in our feeder club team, I was probably one out of 4 brown faces in the whole league. There weren't that many Maori and Pacific Islanders, let alone there weren't many Indigenous players as well. So I didn't look at it as an insecurity, but I sort of looked at it like, geez, I feel like I'm like a black sheep standing out in this new environment. So I sort of took it with a grain of salt, and I just took it as a good thing, not so much as a bad thing, and just being open to the environment that I was in. And you know, being here in South Auckland and Auckland in general, like, you know, you sort of fit in with everyone else. You see everyone that's the same as you, you know, you look alike, whereas over there, you're not so much. So, you know, I was really blessed to have my family there, and yeah, my sense of belonging there was going to church. So I had an aunt, one of my dad's first cousins over there, and I'd message her and she would message me saying, oh, you coming to church this weekend? And I'll be like, oh, auntie, I've got a game this weekend, but you know, when the netball season is finished, I'll be able to come. So you know, church is a very important thing within my family, and you know, Dad always reminds me that, you know, God is important. So that's something that I took with me whenever I was away from my parents, was, you know, to remember who I was, you know, that God is important and my faith is important. So those are sort of the things that our parents have instilled within not only myself, but in my siblings, is, you know, family first, you know, and also just never forgetting who you are, wherever you are. So yeah, I was really fortunate, but in terms of barriers, I was quite fortunate while I was over there. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. My final question that I'll ask the 3 of you before we open it up to anybody else who may want to ask some questions, is what you think could be done to improve or create better experiences for our ethnic communities within our sports sector now. Like, from your personal opinion, what do you think that we could do to make things a bit better? Linda?
I think, first of all, just want to acknowledge Sport Waitakere for even just having this webinar and bringing to light that you guys have started it. Is just you know, kicking it off with the cultural awareness thing. So that's a start. I think if you can take it into the clubs, that would help. And just, it's not about, like you said in the beginning, it's not about going and learning like in detail about every single culture, but it's just about being open-minded, being curious, that, you know, not everyone's the same, but just to be open to learn about cultures or accept people for who they are. And I think in terms of a club space or engagement and growth of each, no matter what sport it is, it's real important that it starts from the top of the club. So hitting the people that actually run the clubs and making sure that what their values are, you know, that this is kind of in the forefront of it. Because if we're working at it from a player's space or from a coach's space, that's not going to make a difference, because you're only looking at a team. But if you look at it from the top, from management level, or club the head of the club, then I think that's a place that we could start, is making sure that that trickles down. So yeah, that's it.
Nice. Adi, anything to add there?
Not too much. I think Linda's got that spot on, you know, like just sort of reiterating the stuff around education and awareness around different cultures and the different things that people go through in general. You know, like the example about that rugby player that obviously had so much on her plate, just things like that, just understanding more and having a bit of education around, you know, like that people do have other things going on in their life to do with their ethnic backgrounds, and just understanding all of that stuff, and potentially even just, you know, having more diverse coaching panels and leaders around clubs and sport and the community as well, obviously with the right credentials, but, you know, just having people there to almost be beacons of hope for people around that are of ethnic minorities or or different, you know, diverse communities to allow other people to actually engage in sport.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely agree with that. Amorangi, any final additions?
Yeah, I think Linda and Ari has pretty much summed up everything. But from my point of view, from a franchise perspective, especially here out, you know, in the Northern Stars region, like just having more familiar faces that can engage and have those relationships within the community. Because some of the communities that we go out to, they don't really know who we are. So, you know, when we rock up and they're like, oh, who's that? So we need to, there needs to be more community engagement and just having, you know, familiar faces like, you know, Māori and Pacific, you know, ethnicities that that can relate, because, you know, so we can understand them on a deeper level and we can have those connections. And, you know, if they can see a familiar face that's reached these levels, they can say, well, if she can do it, I can do it too. So that's probably the only thing that I want to add, but otherwise everyone has said everything.
Awesome. I guess that also re-emphasizes another important part of our cultures is having somebody of our ethnicity speaking from, say, from those different levels within the sports system, whether they're sitting on the board, whether they're in those spaces of influence. They can have a huge impact, or even when people are speaking on things of tikanga Māori, it has to come from somebody who's Māori. Our people, we tend to gravitate towards familiarity. So we will always go to where there's familiar faces or familiar environment or things that resonate with our culture. So yeah, awesome that you bring that up. I'd like to open the floor out to anybody who's got any questions for our amazing special guests while we have them, before they have to go do some extra training before their dinner.
I'll chime in, Chantal, while I'm sure everyone's hurriedly typing away to get your question out there. I can see some fingers going. Yeah, I guess my story is, you know, I'm Fijian Indian, but every time I've kind of been met, people are like, oh, do you play cricket? And I'm like, but in Fiji, we don't even play cricket. Like, that's not even our sport. So, you know, and then, you know, when they find out I'm a rugby referee, it's a whole different story again. But I guess my question to the panel is, has there ever been a time in the sports system where you've been stereotyped for your culture? And maybe do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I mean, like you said, Javid, like, you know, many stereotypes have been, you know, like come from me being an Indian that plays cricket as well. You know, so like, I guess sometimes you just got to take those things with a grain of salt, and, you know, just sort of be proud of it. You know, like, you almost think of it as like, you know, I am someone, I'm one of so many people that are like me that play cricket, you know, and be like, that's pretty awesome that I'm a part of something bigger and a part of such a massive community of Indian people that play cricket, you know, and almost like connecting it to it in a way. I guess that's a way to sort of think about it, maybe.
Cool. Anyone else got the other two, if you got anything else to add?
I probably didn't get stereotyped, but I probably stereotyped, like, not I'm just being honest here, but one season, so I did some coaching while I was a player over in Sri Lanka for rugby, and when I initially went over, I was like, rugby, yeah, right, like Sri Lankans don't play rugby. So I went over there, and I was just like surprised that majority of the green grass that was there, yeah, you had cricket there, which is their main sport, but there were so many people playing footy, and I was like, nah, this is crazy. But that's kind of like, I kind of had that kind of mentality as well, that, you know, the Sri Lankan, they don't play rugby. But also, like, just the experience, how you guys talked about diet, you know, in Southeast Asia, like, a lot of them are small athletes. So I was like, you guys need to eat more meat, and all that kind of stuff, but in their normal diet, it's mostly carbohydrates and they don't really eat meat. So I was like, in terms of culture and understanding that, I had to see how we can look at their diet based on what they eat traditionally. So I learned a bit about that. And yeah, in terms of the question that you asked, going back to that, that's kind of like, I didn't receive it, but they were on the receiving end of me stereotyping them. Does that make me look like a bad person?
No,
You're
it
human.
totally doesn't. I mean, and that's the thing that, I mean, Addie and Linda, you both made mention to is, we may have these stereotypes, but it's about learning from them, and it's about, understanding where you can and explaining that. So there's a question here from Michael O'Keefe that says, how do clubs reach out to the communities, especially when the sport is not a traditional part of that community? I know you guys, so kind of any insights?
Is it a question for us or a question for you guys?
Well, I mean, for both, I guess for both, right? But I guess, for you guys, have you played sports that aren't traditional to you, and what got you into them?
Well, I can't say that I have played sports to an extent that are, not traditional to me. I play cricket and hockey, which are two sports that are dominated by, well, who I am as an Indian person. But I guess at school and things, getting around things like rugby and football and things like that aren't stereotypically played by Indian people. You can just sort of learn about the sort of the connection in sport that you can get, and also just enjoy it in general. I mean, in relation to that question, I'd just say, if there is someone that is of the ethnic minority in terms of that sport, probably getting them to again just sort of drive sort of that lead towards getting more engagement from other ethnic backgrounds is probably what I'd say.
Hey Jav, I'm going to spin the question to you because you did a project where you were focusing on lawn bowls, but you were engaging with the Pacific community, and lawn bowls generally isn't one of the main sports that we would engage in. How did you go about engaging with that community when, like what Michael is asking, it's not a traditional part of that community?
Yeah, I think, as part of that role, I was trying to get Indians and Samoans playing lawn bowls, and that was my first gig here at Sport Waitakere. And in terms of the Pacific community, for me, it wasn't about me going to the community, but me connecting in with leaders and leaders within that community who were then able to influence and get people to come and try the sport. But I guess the biggest win for me was we invested in some modified lawn bowls equipment that I was able to take to churches and their groups, and they were able to play the sport over there, and that's where I got the hook. But what we learned from that project was very much that our traditional models of delivering sport, so being a member or etc., wasn't conducive to our Indian and Pacific communities. So how do we, I guess the question to everyone in the webinar is, how do you deliver your sport that is more applicable to those communities? And as Addie says again, for the Indian community, it was someone that looked like them playing the sport and advocating for the sport that got them across the line. Because if we put posters out and just said come, no one came. But if they could see me and could see others from that community playing, it was, we were getting people down to the greens to have a go.
Yeah, I'll jump on the end of that, Jav. I think I support that it's like what we've heard is there is definitely pockets of influence within these different cultures, and how Javid said that he would take bowls to the churches, and knowing that of our Pacific community, that there is a big influence within the church space. I think on top of that as well, if we're talking about from that club part, I think the having that responsibility of doing that, yes, engaging with the community, but then being open to hearing their reasons for not engaging in the first place, and being accepting of that, and then being willing to be able to make changes within the club to enable that engagement with the community. So for example, if you were to go out and engage with Pacific or Māori or whatever community, and that you get that first hook of interest, and then yes, they want to try your sport out, but then you find out later, well, actually they can't, they're not members because you play it on a, we're just going to use the church example, because you play it on a Sunday, so or the trainings are on Sunday, so then that blocks our Pacific community. How motivated are you as a club to make changes to be able to allow that? Or is it just this point of engaging with community, and then only going as far as what your already set guidelines allow, or your already set framework allows, rather than being open to changing that as a club? Would be my
Thanks, Jess. Mick, what are some of the other questions that we have in our chat?
Excuse me, Chantal, can I just jump on that question a little bit?
Of course you can, Jason.
Yeah, I got something to share with you guys that I think just being more inclusive to the older generation will support you to better engage with the young people you want to. So, and also be providing some family-oriented events will also trigger out the connection as well. So there's some stories I want to share with you. There's one ice racing club in West Auckland. So ice racing is not part of the mainstream of the Chinese sport, but however, that club end up with over 90% of the members are Chinese, and some are Chinese. So the story starts with a Asian Chinese lady, and as a good friend with one of the club member, and she's very super welcomed, and also she become a regular friend with the club managers, and then she grabbed some her friends, her Chinese friend joined the club, and they all of a sudden the club becomes a ladies club. You know, so the Chinese ladies, they just get together, just share their stories, and you know, especially in other nation. So we are away from our home, so we have a lot of story, a lot of pressure from the life, from personal, from work. So they just found a place to share with their experience. They had nothing to do with the sport, with ice racing. They just talking. And then they finally find, oh, maybe we can bring my kids to try this sport because this is ice racing club. And then they become bigger. The group become bigger and bigger, and then now end up with over 90% members are Asian, are Chinese. So that's something you can do. So first of all, maybe creating a welcome environment, and also become more culture diverse and inclusive environment as well. So maybe you can attract some parents, and then parents have totally influence on their kids. So maybe you can just try that, and to start the conversation, start the connections with those communities.
Awesome, thanks, Jason. Mick.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. That's thanks, Chantal. Yeah, definitely some key things to take away from there is about identifying the leaders within the communities to be able to utilise that influencing power within to make that happen, or to even make the sport that might not be mainstream in those communities visible. You know, a lot of us have talked about visibility a bit. So, Michael, I hope that's answered your question a little bit. Lynette has thrown in a question in there. Lynette, did you want to ask that question to? No, you want me to ask it? Okay. So the question to our guests is how often do you experience racism in your sport, and how do you manage it? I'll open that one up to the floor.
That's a good question. I think it's not a like it's people know already that like that casual racism is quite common, and it's really bad in sport as well. I know it's not just in rugby, there's other sports that experience it as well, but in terms of, I guess, how we manage it in our team is we just make sure we set our like I said about you need to make sure you have good core values as a team or as a club, so that when things like that are mentioned, we kind of like make sure that the language and how we treat people in line with the values that we've set for our team. So like the outward stuff, we can't really control that, but in terms of how we control that in our environment, that's what we look at. But yeah, it's just about making sure we change the language that we use. If people mention something, we just pick up on it and have those conversations with them. I guess the thing that we got to realize is that we can't control how people react, but what we can do is control the environment, or not control, but kind of like look after the environment that we're in. And then hopefully from there, the people in your environment learn, and an effect is like a domino effect, in whatever environment they're in, just implementing the same thing. So yeah, that's kind of like something that we do. Make sure the values that we set align with that, and make sure that if there is those kind of comments, that we just put people online and make sure that it's in line with what we as a team agreed with in the beginning. Was that confusing or what?
Not at all, Linda. That was a pretty awesome answer, and I think that's key. Is if everyone has the same is aligned in terms of those values, it makes it easier for the group to be able to display those values as a group, and have that opportunity to, as you say, not control, but has a little bit of an influence, and is visibility again, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like that saying, "Hey, monkey see, monkey do." So, you learn what you portray is based on the environment that you're in. So, I like that saying, "You're a product of your environment." So, if we can make sure that the environment that we're in is safe and for our people, and make sure that they're all good, and that, then I think wherever they go, they'll influence the other spheres that they're involved in as well.
I think that also, that's awesome, and you're talking within a team perspective, and how from a club perspective, for those that are here tonight, is how can we look at those values within our club, and how does that filter through to our teams, and so on and so forth. Yeah, awesome. Amorangi or Adi, did you want to throw anything out there, or?
No, I think Linda's hit the nail on the head there. There's not much else that I can say that'll contribute to that.
Yeah, Linda, you're just saying everything that we want to say.
I just talk too much, that's why. Sorry, guys.
Nah, that's all good. Personally, I haven't experienced racism, but one thing that did stick with me when I was in Australia was tokenism. And tokenism over there in the Indigenous round. So a player over there, what was her name? I forgot her name. Geez, I'm so bad. But anyway, she was the only Indigenous player in the whole league in the Suncorp over in Australia. And she was a poster girl for the Indigenous round. So the Indigenous round runs for 2 weeks. And she didn't take part or get to play in any of the games. So my question is, in terms of, I wouldn't say that's racism, but it's like people pick and choose when to use people's culture, but not actually the people that are the poster girl and this and that, and then they don't get to take part. Like that for me sort of stuck with me, and I was just so annoyed because, meanwhile, while you're trying to be inclusive, but the person that's being the poster girl of everything isn't included. So I don't know if that's something that I don't know if that relates to what's here in New Zealand, but in places in like Australia, that's something that's very common over there. So yeah, I don't know how that ties into racism, but in terms of tokenism, it's sort of like on the same wavelength. Yeah.
Mick, can I jump in there?
Yes.
I think that's awesome that you bring that up, and how you said you're not sure if that happens in New Zealand. I think it's sugar coated a lot, because it definitely does happen here in New Zealand, and I think we need to call that out. It's the same as having our tick boxes. Do we have a certain percentage of Māori taking part in this? Do we have a certain percentage of Pasifika taking part in this? If we do, yep, tick the box, done. But what was the reason behind it, and what's the value or the impact that we have by including them, or having a Māori seat at the table, a Pacific voice at the table? What's the importance, as opposed to just, yep, we've done that. So yeah, I think it's really important that you raise that, and that we continue to call it out to make sure that what we're doing is coming from pure intentions, and to serve our communities, as opposed to serving ourselves, just so that we can say we've done that. Mick, is there one more question or a couple more questions?
Yes, there is. There's another one from Eva here. From a coaching and athlete perspective, what was the motivation behind the decision you made to be where you're at now? What made you click and go for it? So that's for anyone on the panel. Yeah. Did I get that one right, Eva?
Go, Adi.
Yeah, right. Okay, I've got it. Yeah, I mean, like, in terms of what made me go for it, I think it's just, well, I've always tried to reiterate to myself that I always play for the right reasons, and you know, like the results and where I go and everything like that will take care of itself. But I really enjoy just, I guess, just like I really enjoy the training aspect and the sort of camaraderie and all that stuff that you get with sport, and that's sort of something that I crave and something that I want to keep doing. So that's sort of why I was always drawn back to training more and you know, like going to do stuff with my mates afterwards and things like that to sort of better myself, so that, you know, at the end of the day, like, I put some results on the table, but enjoying it the whole way through is I guess my main reason for why I'm still, you know, like trying to compete at the highest or trying to be at the highest level that I can potentially be at. And yeah, I mean, like, from another perspective, is me being also at uni now, it's also been like a pretty cool balance, or like a pretty cool shift to sort of see what life could be like if I didn't have my sport in my life, and it sort of makes me feel really fortunate to be in the position that I am in, because you know, uni is so damn tough and things like that, to actually be able to do what I love, and say that I do it for a living is something that, you know, I don't take lightly, and that's sort of, you know, something that I'll never take for granted, I guess. So.
Nice, thanks, Adi. How are we going there, Amorangi? Do you want to have a crack at that one as well?
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, just looking at the question here, I think what made me want to pursue a career in netball was probably when I first got my ANZ contract while I was quite young, and back then I didn't think that after I finished school and transitioning into you know, professional sport, I didn't think that transition would be quite smooth, but fortunately it was. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. So I think for me, once I got my foot in the door in the ANZ Premiership, I realised that I had the potential to actually pursue a career in netball. But I think where I'm at the moment, it's just a matter of staying in there and just seeing how far I can push myself, because you know, at times netball, and I guess anyone in sports, and I'm sure the other two can relate, is that, you know, you've got to build resilience, and you know, there'll be days that you won't want to get up and train, and there'll be days that you won't get picked to play a game, but you have to front up every week. So I think for me, resilience in sports can transition into all things in life, whether it's study, whether it's your job, just in general. Like, I think the characteristics you learn from sports transition into life as well, vice versa. So I think once you have resilience, so like, you know, no one can take that away from you. So that's sort of something that I keep to myself, is, you know, just to keep pushing, and you know, you'll look back and be like, I didn't think I'd be able to reach those heights, but now that you're there, you know, you just keep pushing for more. So yeah, that's probably what I've got to say about that question. Yeah.
Nice, thank you. Linda.
Might as well. No, so I'm retired now. I'm not like these guys in their prime. But yeah, I played for New Zealand for like 17 years. So I was kind of in it from the beginning, when no one really acknowledged women's rugby, but like just seeing the change in it, I've been lucky enough to be involved. But I guess like being in that space, like Adi was talking about, like if you don't enjoy it, then you know that you probably shouldn't be playing. That's my belief. Like, that's why I hung up the boots. I probably could have still played, but I think when you don't want to get up in the morning and be your best and earn that jersey, then it's time. But the things that I learned through that journey is what's made me want to transition into what I'm doing now, which is coaching. I love the game. I love what you learn from it. Like Amo said, about resilience, about turning up for each other. You learn about being respectful to people, and just the life lessons that you learn. I kind of like see how there's been a change as like there's a new generation. That's true, but my biggest belief is that the game can evolve, and how you train and how you teach it can evolve. But I think in terms of the values and standards should never change. And for me, that's kind of what I want to, what I learned from coming through the grades. But that's kind of what I want to instill in terms of my coaching, is that, you know, the young ones coming through, you're not going to get a starting spot straight away. You know, when you get picked for the team, you might be on the bench warming up for a wee bit. But just to teach them about, you know, buying your time and working hard and that work ethic. Because I think playing sport teaches you how to be a good person, first and foremost, by being a good human being. And hopefully through my coaching, I can create some new breed of athletes, but also create an environment where we create some good people and good humans that will give back to the sport. But yeah, that's kind of why I'm coaching, is I love people, I love seeing them grow, and love seeing them fulfill their potential. But yeah, just stop there before I start crying.
Nice one.
Yeah, well,
thanks,
just
Linda.
put me on mute, eh?
Hey, yeah, before you bust out into a song. Awesome. Hey, thanks, team. I'm going to pass back to Chantal. That's all the questions that hopefully they've all been answered. So Chantal, hand pass back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mick.
Mike's got a question there.
Oh, yep.
Chantal?
Over to you, Mike.
Kia ora tātou. Te tuatahi mihi atu ki a koe e hoa, Chanel. Nau e kawia mai te reo whakamuimiti tūwhera o tātou nei hui o te pō. O tira koutou katoa ngā kai ngā kai kōrero matua, te toko toru nei. Koutou o tira koutou e hono atu ki tēnei hui, ki tēnei whare kōrero me ki, he mihi atu ki a koutou, nau mai haere mai. Ko Mike tipena tēnei, ko au ki tētahi o ngā kai whakahaere o hioranga, aroha mai he oranga pautama, o te whare hākina kina o Waitakere, mihi atu ki a koutou. He pātai tēnei, ki te tuatahi e tukuna ki a koe Amorangi. My question is to you, probably first and foremost, the Amorangi, but I guess everyone else can also answer. In your experiences within your sport, journey, I know for a fact that there's been elements of tikanga, and more recently with the Stars, you know, concepts of haka have been brought into play. My question is, in your experience, in those concepts being brought in, as well as the many others, I'm not sure what they may be, but karakia, other tikanga protocols, do you feel, from your observations, has it enhanced the experience of yourself and others that may not be Māori as well? And then probably further to that, has it also enhanced their performance? So has the haka, for example, given you I don't know, some type of superpower that's enabled you to go an extra 3 minutes or whatever it might be?
Yeah.
And this is probably relevant to Adi, you also mentioned that your club has put in certain protocols or certain steps or measures to be culturally appropriate. Has that also enhanced your enjoyment, your engagement in the sport, and then also further to that, has it enhanced your ability to perform? Kia ora.
Kia ora, Mike, mō ngā pātai tino rawi rawa. So I think for us at the Stars this year, in terms of incorporating tikanga within our team, being a franchise based in South Auckland and majority of our population being Māori, we thought that it was right to do something like the haka this year, because we felt that, you know, the community they were representing, we thought that it was right to do something like that. But in terms of tikanga, so I obviously being a newbie to the Stars, in terms of cultural diversity within the Stars, it's always been there. Like, we're all about whānau, and that's probably one of our main posts, like our main sort of values within the Stars. And I think that incorporating waiata, doing small things like karakia, and just learning different stuff like that within the team, it really got us to a good start in the season, although we fell short this year. But we do think that all those things, like even stuff like acknowledging Samoan Language Week, and, you know, just acknowledging everyone that we represent was a key part of why we were doing well, because you know, in the Stars we're all different. And it's actually funny that you mentioned that, because the girls, so there's probably like, I don't know, there's half of us that are of, you know, Māori, Pacific Island descent, and the rest are all Pākehā. And some of them don't come from South Auckland. And the fact that they were really open to learning the haka, some of them were quite anxious, but a lot of the girls after felt very empowered that they had experienced something like that, because a lot of them hadn't experienced doing a haka in a small group, let alone on national TV. So that was a big stepping stone for not only the Stars, but netball in general, because from the top of my head, Pulse was probably the only other team that had performed a haka. So I think in terms of the Stars, it really brought us closer together to really embrace, you know, Māoritanga, and just showing that everyone in their own right had their own mana. So I feel that it empowered us in a way that, you know, we could all rely on each other to do the haka, but to also perform. So yeah, that was something quite special, and I hope that this is a stepping stone heading into the right direction for not only Māori stuff, but, you know, embracing all the cultures that we have within the South Auckland community.
In response to you, Mike, I think from my experience, I think 100% that the protocols being put in place by at club cricket at suburbs definitely has had an impact on our performance. And I think from a personal experience, I could relate this back to sort of my induction into the Aces almost. So I've probably been around the Aces boys for about 12 to 18 months now, ahead of gaining my first contract this year. But the reason behind why I've sort of been around these boys for about 12 months now is something that my coach at the Aces sort of talked me through about, you know, at the start of the year. It was sort of telling me that you'll always feel like you're trying to prove something to other people, or you won't feel too safe, or you won't feel a sense of belonging until you've spent time with people and people get to understand you as a person and sort of everything that you bring to the table. And I think that hits home in relation to what you've asked, is that I think being able to actually make people feel at home with protocols for Muslim people to pray during training sessions, etc., have also, you know, given them the space and the opportunity to feel at home and feel like they've got a sense of purpose and worth in a side, which will definitely translate to better performance as a whole. Because, you know, when you don't feel like you're safe or anything like that, you're not really going to be focusing too much on your game or anything. You're going to be focusing on, you know, whether your insecurities, etc. But when you feel safe and stuff, you're in a position to really sort of show your true colors, I think. So I think that's definitely helped a lot.
Pai. E kōrero whakamutunga ki a koe e Amorangi. E mohio ana au, kaore koe tipu aki ki te uru, kaore koe e kuraina ki te uru. Engari hoi anō, e mihi mahana ki a koe ki te whakai anu, ki te whakai atu, ki te whai wahi i tēnei hui. I ki tērā kaupapa, ki te tautoko, ki te whakawhiti kōrero, ki te nohotahi, ki te kai o te rangatira he kōrero, pea nō rerehi mihi atu ki a koe Amorangi. Kia ora koutou.
Tēnā koe.
Can I ask a question?
To yourself or to
Amorangi? Hey, yeah. So, do you know how you guys, like, first of all, congratulations, first time, you're like for the haka. It's common in the Black Ferns, we've done it from the beginning, but like who drove that? Whose idea was it for you guys to do that? Was it from the top? Was it the players? Like, yeah, where did that come from?
I think it all stemmed from Netball New Zealand wanting to incorporate something similar to Suncorp over in Australia, which was the Indigenous round over there. But we sort of looked at it as they sort of had to unpack it because they wanted to name it a whakapapa round. But that round, you know, not a lot of the franchises know what a whakapapa is. So they were just throwing all these concepts out like whakapapa or heritage. And so we all sort of, so it was called the Heritage Round here in New Zealand. So we had to come up with something, you know, it was each franchise's decision what they wanted the Heritage Round to be. But I think the players, well, myself, Maya Wilson and Whai Karina, which is her mother, we sort of pushed for a haka to be done. So I think a lot of the girls weren't really keen on it because, you know, some of them had never done it before. And I thought that it was a good opportunity to showcase, you know, as a franchise, what we do. So a lot of the girls, like we had, you know, had a team meeting and discussed, you know, what are some of the things that we wanted to include in that haka. So it was a collective thing. But I think in terms of the people driving it, it was myself, Maya, and Whai Karina, not to blow my own trumpet or anything, but we just thought that it was cool. It was an awesome opportunity because when we say Heritage Round, like, you know, it can mean anything to anyone, but I think for us, we really wanted to represent the community and especially the population that we represent, mainly being Māori. So it was only right to do something like that. So I hope that other teams can come forward and really show the mana and the ihi that they have to drive those sort of things. But yeah, I just hope that a lot of the teams can say, yeah, that's cool, like maybe we can jump on board. So, and not being whakamā or being shy about it. But yeah, obviously seeing the Black Ferns and doing that stuff, it sort of empowers not only netballers, but I'm sure other sports as well. So yeah, it's really cool to see that Māori being incorporated on a broader spectrum.
Cool. Full credit to, oh, that's such a rugby term. That's awesome. Like you said that you guys drove it, but also acknowledging the umbrella that you guys are under, Netball New Zealand. Like we speak about cultural like diversity, it's got to start from the top, and that's a prime example of them being open to you guys doing that. So I guess that's kind of what I want to emphasize is it comes from players, but also if the top ain't open or you know, open for it, then it can't happen. So It's awesome. Thanks, Amo, for sharing.
No worries.
Awesome. Thank you so much, team. I'm just mindful of our time, and I just want to finish up with one last question we have from our CEO, Lynette Adams, but it's to, as opposed to our panel, it's actually aimed at our Zoom participants, those from our various clubs. What are the steps that you might take now after receiving the information from tonight's webinar? Now you don't have to answer it now, but I would love for you to put it in the chat, or if anybody wants to quickly share, you're more than welcome to do that, and I'll wrap us up.
For our venue, we actually sit right next to a mosque, and not once have thought of going knocking on the door and saying, hey, what can we do? So I guess the conversation has kind of started the thought process of who's in our local community, what kind of contact can we make, and then figuring out the how and the do, but just start with the contact and the communication first. And seriously, you have to literally drive past the mosque to get to our climbing gyms. So how has that not been thought of before?
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for sharing that. Very good place to start understanding our communities, who's right there, who are our neighbors, how can we engage with them and understand them. For our other participants, feel free to put your ideas in the chat, but I am going to wrap us up. I'd just like to take this time to thank our amazing special guests who took the time out of their busy schedules to share with us tonight. The richness of this webinar really came from your stories and your personal experiences. So thank you for being open and vulnerable to answering the questions that we had. Some of those experiences are tapu, sacred and special to you guys, but for you to be open to sharing that for us to continue learning and spreading awareness, we're so grateful. Thank you also to our wider Sport Waitakere panel and the Whau Local Board, our chair, Kay Thomas, who made the time out to be here tonight, and everybody for joining our webinar. Thank you so much for being with us. Next steps from here, we don't want to just plant the seed and then not water it. From here, please feel free to get in touch with Javid, who is our community sport and rec team, our community engagement team lead. And whatever questions you may have, he'll be able to guide you or link you up with the right people and resources, or whatever other webinars or workshops we might have in this cultural diversity space. Thank you again for being with us tonight. I'm going to close in karakia, and then you're more than welcome to go and have dinner if you haven't yet done that, and be with your families. And why is this going backwards? It wants us to keep doing the webinar. Cool. Feel free to follow along. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te ata whai o tō tātou ari kia ihu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga, ki te wairua tapu, ake, amene. Kia ora team, thank you so much once again on behalf of our Sport Waitakere and Whau Local Board. Whānau, have a great night, and we'll see you again soon. Pō Mārie.